Welcome back to the deep dive. I've always been fascinated by this idea that somewhere deep beneath the surface, there's a secret world hidden from us. A world where the lines between science fiction and reality blur. And today we're diving headfirst into one of the most enduring and intriguing conspiracy theories out there, the Dulce Base.
Ah, Dulce, a small town in New Mexico that's become synonymous with tales of alien encounters, government cover-ups, and technology so advanced it sounds like something straight out of a movie.
Exactly. It's like the Area 51 of underground bases. Just imagine a sprawling subterranean complex where the U.S. government is working side by side with extraterrestrials, conducting experiments that could rewrite the textbooks.
Yeah.
I mean, the possibilities are mind-blowing.
It certainly captures the imagination, doesn't it? And for decades, it's fueled countless books, documentaries, and online forums. But as with any good conspiracy, we have to ask ourselves, what's the story behind the story? Where did this all begin?
Well, you know what they say, behind every great conspiracy, there's an even greater conspiracy theorist. And in the case of Dulce Base, that theorist is Paul Benowitz.
Paul Benowitz, a businessman and physicist from Albuquerque, became convinced in the late 1970s that he was intercepting strange electromagnetic signals near Kirtland Air Force Base. He believed these signals were evidence of alien activity, and his investigations eventually led him to the small town of Dulce near the Colorado border.
So this one guy's hunch sparked an entire global conspiracy. That's fascinating. But how did he go from signals to an entire underground base? Did he, stumble upon a secret entrance while hiking in the desert, or find a discarded alien coffee cup with the Dulce Base logo on it?
Nothing quite so dramatic, but what's interesting is how his initial observations, coupled with his growing paranoia, seemed to align with the anxieties of the Cold War era. People were already on edge about government secrets and the potential for advanced technologies being developed in secret.
Right, the Cold War was a breeding ground for suspicion and paranoia. It's easy to see how someone like Benowitz, who was already seeing strange signals, could connect the dots and come up with a theory like the Dulce Base. But if this place is so secret, how do we even know what it looks like? Has anyone actually seen the blueprints?
Well, no confirmed blueprints have ever surfaced, but several accounts describe a chilling, multi-level complex, each level allegedly dedicated to something more bizarre than the last. And this is where things get really intriguing, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a layer cake of weirdness.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this supposed structure. What kind of activities are allegedly going on down there? Are we talking like alien dance parties and intergalactic karaoke nights?
Not quite. Let's start with level 1. This is said to be the main entrance and security checkpoint, heavily guarded and equipped with advanced surveillance systems. Think a high-tech security that would rival any top-secret government facility you can imagine.
Okay, so far so good. Pretty standard for a secret base, right?
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it gets a lot more interesting the deeper we go. What about level 2?
Level 2 is where things start to get a little more, shall we say, extraterrestrial. It's said to be dedicated to the testing of advanced weaponry potentially derived from alien technology.
Alien weaponry. Now we're talking, I'm picturing laser cannons, plasma rifles, maybe even some kind of doomsday device.
Yeah.
This is where the government keeps all the cool stuff they don't want the public to know about, right?
Well, that's the theory, and it's this potential merging of human and alien technology that makes the Dulce Base story so captivating, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It taps into our fascination with the unknown and the possibility that we're not alone in the universe. And let's be honest, the idea that the government might be hiding advanced alien tech from us is both exciting and a little bit terrifying. But let's keep going. What about level 3? What secrets does this level hold?
Level 3 is where things take a decidedly biological turn. This is allegedly where experiments on genetic manipulation are being conducted, and some accounts even go so far as to suggest human-alien hybridization programs are taking place.
Whoa. Hold on a minute. Human-alien hybrids? That's taking things to a whole new level. I mean, we're not just talking about reverse engineering alien tech anymore. We're talking about messing with the very fabric of life itself. Would you think, could there be any truth to these claims?
Well, it's certainly one of the more controversial aspects of the Dulce Base narrative, and as with many of these claims, there's no concrete evidence to support them. But the idea of genetic manipulation, especially when you introduce the possibility of alien involvement, is both fascinating and disturbing.
Definitely. I mean, imagine the implications. If scientists were actually creating human-alien hybrids, it would be a scientific breakthrough of epic proportions. But it also raises all sorts of ethical questions. Are these hybrids willing participants? What rights do they have? This is getting deep even for the deep dive, but I can't wait to hear more what happens as we venture deeper into this alleged underground labyrinth.
Well, if we descend to level 4, we enter a realm that sounds straight out of science fiction. This level is rumored to house various alien species, some being studied, others maybe even collaborating with the humans.
Collaborating. So it's not just about humans studying aliens. We're talking about a potential partnership, an intergalactic exchange of knowledge and technology. Now, that's what I call a real deep dive.
It's certainly a compelling idea, isn't it, to think that somewhere beneath the surface, humans and aliens might be working together. But of course, it also raises questions about the nature of this collaboration. What are the aliens' motivations, and what are the potential consequences for humanity?
Those are some great questions and ones that I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more about. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I have to ask who else besides Paul Benowitz claims to have seen this place? Is there anyone else who can corroborate his story?
That's where we delve into the accounts of two other figures central to the Gale. The Dulce Base legend Phil Schneider, a geologist and engineer, claimed to have worked on several underground bases, including Dulce and Thomas Costello, who claimed to have been a security guard at the base.
Okay, let's start with Phil Schneider. What makes his story so compelling?
Schneider's story is dramatic to say the least. He claimed to have been involved in a firefight between military personnel and aliens at Dulce in 1979, even claiming to have been injured by an alien weapon during the encounter.
Wait, a firefight between soldiers and aliens? Tell me more about this. Was it like a full-blown war or more of a skirmish?
Well, according to Schneider, it was a chaotic and violent encounter that the government allegedly tried to cover up. He described a scene of utter chaos with soldiers being killed and a desperate struggle against beings with advanced weaponry.
Wow, that sounds intense. I mean, it's one thing to hear about aliens collaborating with humans, but to hear about them fighting it paints a very different picture, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and this alleged firefight raises all sorts of questions about the true nature of the relationship between humans and aliens at Dulce Base, if such an event did occur. What were the circumstances that led to it, and what are the implications for the future of human-alien interaction?
I'm on the edge of my seat here. This is getting good. But what about Thomas Costello? What did he have to say about his time at Dulce Base?
Costello's accounts are equally chilling. He alleged that he witnessed alien species being held captive, experiments on both humans and animals, and technology that defies our current understanding of science. He even claimed to have smuggled out documents detailing the base's operations before disappearing under mysterious circumstances.
Documents. So there might be actual proof out there somewhere.
Right.
This is like something straight out of an X-Files episode, and disappearing under mysterious circumstances that definitely adds fuel to the conspiracy fire.
It certainly does, and these are just a few of the key players in the Dulce Base saga.
Okay, so we have strange signals, a secret underground base, a firefight with aliens, and a missing security guard, and we're just getting started. I'm hooked.
You're catching on quickly. The Dulce Base story goes even deeper, with claims of advanced technology that sound like they're ripped straight from the pages of science fiction.
All right, bring on the sci-fi. What kind of tech are we talking about? This is as mind-blowing as I'm imagining.
Well, one of the most common claims is that they're developing anti-gravity propulsion systems at Dulce Imagine vehicles that can defy gravity. It would revolutionize transportation as we know it. You, as someone who keeps up with the latest advancements in aerospace technology, know how significant a breakthrough like that would be.
Oh, absolutely. Forget self-driving cars. I want a self-flying car. But let's be realistic for a second. Anti-gravity technology is still firmly in the realm of science fiction, right?
That's right. While there have been tantalizing hints and fringe experiments, nothing concrete has emerged to suggest that we're anywhere close to mastering anti-gravity propulsion.
Okay, so maybe flying cars are still a pipe dream, but what about other types of advanced tech? I mean, if they're reverse engineering alien spacecraft, they must be working on something pretty mind-blowing, right?
Absolutely. Some accounts describe energy-based weapons that dwarf anything in our current arsenals, weapons that could potentially neutralize targets. Instantly, we're talking about the kind of destructive power that would make nuclear weapons look like firecrackers.
Vaporize targets instantly. That's some serious firepower. And if this tech really exists, it's no wonder the government is keeping it under wraps.
Precisely, the implications of such weaponry are staggering. It could completely change the balance of power on a global scale.
That's a chilling thought, and it makes you wonder, what else are they hiding down there?
Well, some accounts go even further, claiming that they're developing teleportation technology, like that classic beam me up, Scotty kind of stuff.
Teleportation, really now, that sounds a bit far-fetched, even for me. I mean, it's one thing to bend the laws of physics with anti-gravity, but to completely break them with teleportation, that's a whole other level of technological advancement.
It certainly stretches the boundaries of what we currently believe is possible, but remember, we're dealing with alleged alien technology here, and who knows what kind of scientific principles they might be operating under.
Okay, I'll give you that. Alien tech could potentially rewrite the rule book of science as we know it. But let's move on from the mind-bending physics for a second and talk about something a little more down-to-earth weapons. I mean, if they're reverse engineering alien tech, I'm guessing they're not building laser pointers down there.
You're right, the claims about weapons development at Dulce are some of the most disturbing Poach had. There's talk of mind control devices and psychological warfare technology that could potentially manipulate thoughts and emotions on a mass scale.
Mind control, now that's a conspiracy theory I can get behind. And imagine the possibilities I can finally get my neighbor to stop playing that awful polka music at all hours of the night.
I think there are far more serious implications to consider if such technology were to fall into the wrong hands. It could be used to control populations, influence elections, even wage war without ever firing a shot.
Okay, yeah, world domination is probably off the table. But seriously, the idea that the government might be experimenting with mind control technology is both fascinating and terrifying. It makes you wonder just how far down the rabbit hole they've gone.
It's certainly a topic that sparks a lot of debate, and it's important to remember that these are just claims with no concrete evidence to support them. But the possibility, however remote, is enough to make one pause and think.
Right, and as we always say on the deep dive, it's all about critical thinking. We should be open to exploring these ideas, but we also need to be wary of falling down the rabbit hole of speculation without considering all sides of the story.
Exactly. And speaking of different perspectives, there are plenty of people out there who think the whole Dulce Base thing is a load of baloney.
Really. But with all these amazing stories, who wouldn't believe it? What are the main arguments against the existence of Dulce Base?
Well, the biggest argument, of course, is the lack of concrete evidence. There are no official documents, no verified photographs, no irrefutable proof that the base actually exists.
So it's basically a he said, she said situation. A lot of intriguing stories, but nothing tangible to back them up.
Pretty much. And while witness testimonies can be compelling, they're often anecdotal and can be easily disputed or explained away by other means.
Okay, that's a fair point, but let's play devil's advocate for a minute. What do the believers say about the lack of evidence? Do they have any counterarguments?
They argue that the very lack of evidence is evidence itself. They claim it proves just how effective the government is at covering up the truth. They point to the fact that whistleblowers often face intimidation and discrediting campaigns to silence them.
The government is so good at covering things up that there's no evidence.
Argument. It's a classic conspiracy theory trope, but I have to admit it's a tough one to debunk.
It is, and there's always that nagging question, what if they're right?
Yeah.
What if there is something truly extraordinary happening at Dulce Base and the government is going to extreme lengths to keep it hidden?
That's what makes these deep dives so much fun. It's all about exploring the possibilities, even if they seem far-fetched. But we also have to be realistic. There's a big difference between healthy skepticism and outright denial. Absolutely. And when it comes to the Dulce Base, it's important to find that balance, to be open to the possibility that something extraordinary might be happening, but also to demand evidence before jumping to conclusions.
Well said. So let's assume, for the sake of this deep dive, that the Dulce Base is real. What are the implications? What does it mean for humanity if the government is working with aliens who possess such advanced technology?
That's a question that has fascinated people for decades. If this collaboration is happening, it raises some profound questions about our place in the cosmos and the future of our species.
I mean, are these aliens just sharing their tech with us out of the goodness of their alien hearts? Or is there something more to it? Are they using us for their own purposes?
That's the heart of the mystery, isn't it? Some theories suggest that the aliens might have their own agenda, perhaps even manipulating us for some grand unknown scheme.
Like, are they going to harvest our organs and turn us into batteries? Or maybe they're just here to steal our delicious tacos?
I think those scenarios are a little far-fetched, even for the Dulce Base conspiracy. But it's not unreasonable to consider the possibility that they might be seeking something from us resources. Genetic material, who knows?
Okay, fair enough. But let's look at the other side of the coin. Some people believe that these aliens are actually trying to help us evolve to guide us towards a more enlightened future.
That's another popular theory often associated with those who believe in benevolent extraterrestrial beings. But even if their intentions are good, their methods might seem a little intrusive, let's say.
Intrusive, like abducting people in the middle of the night and probing them.
That's the kind of thing that tends to make people a little skeptical. And it's understandable the idea of alien intervention, even if it's for our own good, can be unsettling.
Definitely. It's like that old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
But even if their methods are questionable, imagine the possibilities. If we could harness alien technology for good, it could solve so many of our problems, from climate change to disease to energy scarcity.
The potential benefits are undeniable, but so are the risks, as we've discussed. Alien technology could also be used for destructive purposes, potentially even leading to our own downfall.
Right, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts,
Yeah.
absolutely. Especially when it involves technology that we barely understand. It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to approach these topics with a discerning mind, to weigh the potential benefits against the potential risks.
Well said. So what do you think is the Dulce Base a reflection of our deepest fears or a window into a hidden reality?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think there's an easy answer. But regardless of whether the Dulce Base turns out to be a real place or just a product of our collective imagination, it forces us to confront some fundamental questions about our place in the universe and the possibilities that lie beyond our current understanding.
Well said. And, even if the Dulce Base is just a myth, it's a pretty darn good one. A story that continues to captivate and intrigue us decades after it first emerged.
It certainly is. And sometimes a good story is all you need to spark a sense of wonder and keep the imagination alive.
Absolutely. And speaking of stories, we've only just scratched the surface of the Dulce Base saga. We haven't even touched on the alleged alien species that are supposedly hanging out down there.
Oh yes, the aliens. That's a whole other chapter in this intriguing tale.
All right, let's talk aliens. We've mentioned the Greys, those big-eyed, gray-skinned extraterrestrials that are practically synonymous with alien encounters. But I have a feeling there's more to this intergalactic guest list, right? Are we talking a cosmic cantina scene here with all sorts of bizarre beings rubbing elbows?
Well, some accounts mention other species, but their presence is even more speculative than the Greys, for instance. There are tales of Nordics, tall, blonde humanoids, often associated with more positive interactions. They're sometimes portrayed as advanced beings who are here to guide us.
So, like the cosmic peacekeepers of the galaxy. But let's be honest, not all aliens can be friendly space ambassadors. What about the more menacing types? I'm talking about those creepy crawlies that send shivers down your spine.
Ah, yes, there are stories about insectoids as well. As you might guess, these beings resemble giant insects and tend to elicit a less than warm, fuzzy feeling. But it's interesting how these various accounts often reflect our own fears and fascinations, wouldn't you say?
Totally. We tend to project our own hopes and anxieties onto the unknown. So if some people imagine benevolent space brothers coming to save us, others might conjure up images of sinister insectoid overlords. It's like a cosmic Rorschach test.
Exactly, and it speaks to the power of the Dulce Base story to tap into our collective subconscious and our deepest feels about the unknown.
Speaking of fears, let's circle back to the skepticism surrounding Dulce Base. We've talked about the lack of hard evidence and the inconsistencies in some witness accounts, but what about the more practical scientific arguments against its existence?
Well, building a multi-level underground facility the size of what's described would be an incredibly complex and expensive undertaking. Think about the sheer scale of excavation, ventilation systems, resource transportation. It's hard to imagine that happening without leaving some trace. Someone with your background in engineering would know how difficult it would be to pull off such a massive project without anyone noticing.
Well, absolutely. You can't just dig a giant hole in the ground and expect no one to bat an eye. There would be geological surveys, permits, truckloads of concrete. It would be impossible to keep something like that completely under wraps.
Precisely. And that's one of the main points that skeptics raise. It's statistically improbable, they argue, that a project involving thousands of personnel, scientists, engineers, construction workers, security guards could remain completely secret for decades.
Right. You'd think someone would have spilled the beans by now. Maybe they all signed some super-duper top-secret NDA with a hefty fine for blabbing. Or maybe they've been brainwashed.
Well, that brings us back to those mind control theories, but we have to tread carefully when venturing into such speculative territory.
Fair enough. So where does this all leave us? What should our listeners who might be on the fence about the Dulce Base take away from this deep dive?
I think the most important takeaway, as with any good conspiracy theory, is the importance of critical thinking. Be open to new ideas, consider different perspectives, but always demand evidence and be wary of accepting claims without sufficient proof.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between healthy skepticism and open-mindedness, right? Not dismissing everything out of hand, but also not falling for every wild story that comes along.
Exactly. And when it comes to the Dulce Base, there's plenty of room for both. It's a story that sparks our imagination and makes us question what we think we know about the world.
Well said. So if our listeners are eager to learn more about the Dulce Base, to do some digging of their own, where should they start?
There are countless books, articles, documentaries, and websites dedicated to this enduring mystery. Just remember to approach everything with a critical eye and draw your own conclusions based on the available evidence.
And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will uncover the smoking gun that finally proves or disproves the existence of this legendary underground base.
Stranger things have happened.
They definitely have. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Dulce Base. Thanks for joining us as we explore the depths of this enduring conspiracy theory. Until next time, keep looking up and maybe down, just in case there's a secret alien base lurking beneath your feet.